Les Nuits d'été is a song cycle, one of the first song cycles for voice and orchestra that was ever written. It was by Berlioz and poetry by Gautier. Les Nuits d'été means summer nights, and it's the piece that inspired me to sing classical music 20 years ago. It was on a recording with Regine Crespin singing, and it really, really changed my life. There's a real effervescence and lift to all of the material, even in the songs that are talking about the loss of love or the loss of life. The last song of the cycle, the narrator asks, "Where do you want to go?" And this voice in love responds, "Well, I want to go to the land where love is eternal. Love lasts forever." And the narrator says, "Well, in the realm of love, that doesn't exist. So where do you want to go?" Berlioz, I think, took this wonderful, beautiful approach musically, because with that question, the answer is, where do you want to go together?